better shooting range.
There's the pass to Leitner. Puts it up.
With Archie Diacono. 3 seconds at midcourt. Gives it to Jenkins for the championship. Has not won. Davis. Close out his rock. Close out. Set that quick. Look at this scissor.
Seed in the South, up 13 points in complete command.
So close, sneaky.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the IM6 network. This is, of course, the March Madness Extravaganza. I'm James Gonzalez. I'll be hosting. Today we have Ben with us and Isaiah. How is everyone doing? Starting with Ben.
I'm good. This March Madness intro, of course, gets me hyped. For those that don't know, I was fortunate to be at March Madness yesterday in Brooklyn. Literally got tickets the day of after work. Didn't even think it was gonna be possible, but like I said in my social media post, any dream that you can make, you can try to make. And tickets were a bit pricey, but I was there to watch my UConn Huskies, and it was absolutely an incredible night. Just obviously seeing it on TV is one thing, but actually physically being there is another. It was just absolutely incredible. I also got to see JMU play against Duke. And just the amount of fans that were at both games is absolutely incredible. And even for myself too, before the game, I was outside of Barclays and saw a couple of news anchors, and they approached me and they wanted to interview me from NBC's 10. So I'm going to find that clip at some point. I know that my aunt and uncle saw me on the news yesterday, so that's another great thing that I got to see. But yeah, absolutely crazy to be there yesterday, and just the overall tournament, it's one of the best in sports. So in terms of my Huskies, they got a really awesome game coming up, a rematch against San Diego State. But in terms of the rest of the games for Sweet 16, which we'll talk about, it's going to be absolutely dominant. Be a great fun slate. We'll obviously recap some games in the past. But yeah, just my overall opening thoughts was it was absolutely mind-boggling to be there. But like I said, it was a dream come true, and one of my favorite sporting events I'll ever probably attend for the rest of my life.
Man, you were in the spotlight, boots on the ground in Brooklyn.
For sure.
Isaiah, what's going on?
Not much, guys. It's great to see you guys. Haven't seen you guys in a long time, man. So it's great to see you guys. I survived my trip to Arizona. I had my boots on the ground there in Arizona. I was a couple weeks away from, at the site of the Final Four. Like, I did not realize until I was on the plane that the Final Four is in Glendale this year. So if I had gone couple weeks after I went, I would have been there for the Final Four, and it would have been crazy. But it was a crazy trip. But not as great as your trip, Ben. But yeah, it was a crazy adventure. But I mean, what a sick intro to start the show with. The only bad part about the intro, I know James was talking to me about it, but the only bad part about the intro is that the Oregon Duck got dunked on, and I stand on the show wearing an Oregon Duck shirt. So that was not good to see. But to see Grayson Allen, to see Juwan Howard dancing, to see Christian Leitner, yeah, I mean, it definitely gets you hyped up for March. And also your boy Lonzo Ball, who I had to put in there for you, James.
That is absolutely gross. Let's get to the first round notable games, and there was some. I mean, there were 12 upsets when you think about it in the first two rounds, but looks like UConn, they're just rolling along like they did last year. Untouchable. They're the most together team. Again, a 31-3 record. It just seems like they're rolling Of course, we had the one upset in the East region here, Northwestern 9 over FAU. Let's see, Yale over Auburn by 2. I mean, that was an amazing game. Duquesne winning their first game over BYU 11 over 6 by 4 points. You had Illinois beat Morehead State, and then you had Washington State beat Drake, and we'll talk about Drake later. Let's see. Number 9 Michigan State beat number 8 Mississippi State in the West bracket, and that was no contest. Grand Canyon, who I predicted to beat St. Mary's, did a 12 over 5 there. Alabama with a NBA score 109 to 96 over Charleston. Clemson beat New Mexico easily. Same with Baylor with Colgate. Dayton over Nevada, and Arizona, of course, over Long Beach State. Go over to the Midwest bracket. You had Tennessee take care of business. Texas, Creighton, Oregon with an 11 over 6 win over South Carolina. That was huge there. Kansas was able to hold on to beat Samford. I had that wrong. Gonzaga easily over McNeese State. Utah State being TCU. Purdue moving on. And also, you look at the South bracket here. Marquette easily won. Colorado had an awesome game beating Florida. That one was awesome. I remember watching that one. And then you had Oakland University with maybe the biggest upset of the first round, defeating Cal's Wildcats. Kentucky is out. That's 14 over 3. You had NC State 11 over 6 beating Texas Tech. That was an amazing game as well. Then you had James Madison, the Dukes, beat Wisconsin. That's a 12 over 5. Texas A&M take care of Nebraska, and then Houston drilling Longwood. So, guys, out of the first round, what was your favorite game, you think? I'll start with Ben on this one.
I'm going to go a little biased because it's my brother's college. It's the Dayton comeback against Nevada. I unfortunately wasn't able to see all of this game because I was working, but I was obviously checking the second half when I got out of work, and they were down by, I believe, 10, 12 points. So I get in my car, driving home from work back home, and I checked the score again. Well, actually, I'll take that back. It was more like 16, 18 points in the second half. All right, this is probably over. My brother's probably not going to be too happy. I mean, I was pulling for them. That's pretty much my other squad, probably outside of UConn that I support. So I take a look at the score again, and it's more than 10 points. And it was with like 3.5 minutes left. I'm just like, we'll see what happens. So I get in my house, and I turn the TV on, and Dames just starts making shot after shot after shot. I'm like, this is getting crazy. And like ever since that I got in my house, they won the tour massive comeback run that they were on. So my brother wasn't back yet home from his work. So I just texted him after. I'm like, let's go. Like, oh my God, that was an insane comeback. And he just responded back saying, bro, like, I'm literally in tears. Like, because like just the fact of like your team gets there, right? And just to win it, right, in that type of fashion, like, yeah, obviously they got bounced to Arizona next round, but they played them close. Like, they even got to cut it to 3 in the second half like that. So, for my brother's school, they really have nothing to be ashamed about. I mean, they played essentially, they had a great comeback against a very tough Nevada team, and they came right down the line to Arizona. I mean, like, can't really be upset about that. But yeah, I'll probably go with Dayton, Nevada. It was the scene itself was very tight, but I think that Nevada, I think a lot of people had over Dayton, despite the fact that I think Dayton was a higher seed, because Dayton was pretty much in a very conference-based where they don't play a lot of great competition. Nevada, on the other hand, is kind of the different type of fashion. But I was in the Dayton train. I obviously picked them in that one, and thankfully I was right at this point in time where I had the perfect bracket going on that first day before obviously things have gotten to shit for, I think, pretty much everybody here. But yeah, no, it was it was absolutely wild. And I probably go with, I mean, obviously like Yale, of course, I would have loved to maybe see them beat San Diego State to maybe have a Connecticut matchup, which I don't know has ever happened in March Madness. And obviously, just for my state, that would mean a lot to me. But of course, that didn't happen, which is, of course, unfortunate. But yeah, I'll probably go Dayton and against Nevada, that comeback.
How about you, Isaiah? What was one game that stood out in this first round? I mean, we had some blowouts, but we had some wild ones.
It's obvious. It's the one massive upset of the entire tournament thus far, and that is the Oakland. When I first heard of Oakland, I thought it was the Oakland 30 minutes away from me, where the Oakland Athletics play. But then it turned out it's like somewhere completely different.
Get a map.
Yes, exactly. I need to look at a map. But, it was funny because, like, I had, before I boarded the plane to go back home, that's when the game, like, started, right? So I didn't get to really watch much of the game. And I didn't check the score until I landed. And when I checked the score, Kentucky was down. And they were down by, like, I think 5-6 points at that point. And I texted one of my friends. I was like, dude, if John Calipari loses that game, John Calipari needs to be fired. Like, that would be the fourth first round loss in the last 5 years for Kentucky. Kentucky, believe it or not, has not gotten out of the first round in the last 5 years. The one year that they didn't get bounced in the first round, they didn't even make the NCAA tournament. They lost in the NIT. So,
I mean, we did beat them, I believe, in 2014. But outside of that, they have not gone deep. And this is the one thing that I know. Obviously, sorry to cut you off, Isaiah, but
no, you're good.
I looked at this bracket, guys, for this year. And teams like Kansas, obviously Purdue kind of has that fraudulent feel every year, but the Blue Bloods, right? A lot of the Blue Bloods, I just didn't feel like their teams weren't as deep this year, kind of compared to the last couple of years. Like teams, I know I'm a little bit biased, obviously a UConn fan, but I feel like some teams like UConn and some other teams that I feel like are kind of more newer Blue Bloods are more up on the rise. You just kind of see like these type of older Blue Bloods kind of starting to lose their touch a little bit. And Kentucky, I just think is one of those teams that I feel like is a Blue Blood kind of given their history, but I think that their time is just done. I just think that it's over. I'm not surprised specifically that even though they got upset to Oakland, I feel like they would have gotten bounced early. Just the fact of like a lot of these teams just don't have it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that for me, like that was like the notable game of the first round just because of how much ramifications it was, right? Because who expected Oakland out of all teams to beat Kentucky? And that kid, I forget his name. I think his name is like Jack Goki or something like that. He was phenomenal. I mean, he looked like Steph Curry out there, just hitting big three after big three after big three. And he just showed range. I know after the game, he was like, I know I'm not going to be in the NBA. So I just wanted to show out. But with that performance, you better believe he's going to be in the NBA.
Jack Golke.
What was that?
Jack Golke is his name.
Jack Goki, yeah. I mean, he's going to be in the NBA next year. Like, at the NBA, teams want and value highly three-point shooting. But so congratulations to Oakland on winning that game. Goki was phenomenal. Can't wait to see where he goes in the NBA draft. But I think the bigger story here is Kentucky. I mean, John Calipari needs to be fired. I know we're going to talk about him later on in the show, but I mean, John Calipari is the most overrated coach, fellas, not only in college basketball, but I would say college sports and sports in general. Because who has done less with the talent that he has? Every year, he's got a roster littered with five-star talent, and he's only got one championship in 15 years at Kentucky. Like, this dude is what, sadly, James, I had to bring it up, but this dude is sadly what Doc Rivers is, and maybe even worse, because you literally have, like, the dream team every single year, and somehow, someway, you can't even win a championship. Like, you couldn't win with Devin Booker, Karl Anthony Towns, those guys, Willie Cauley-Stein as well. Like, you couldn't win with those guys. You couldn't win with John Wall. You had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I mean, there have been so many NBA players that have come through Kentucky. And for John Calipari to have one championship, and not only that, to get knocked out by Oakland when you had a massive talent gap, like, it's just a joke. And the fact that the university hasn't fired him yet, I mean, I don't know what they're doing. He should be gone. Like, there's no way, like, with Kentucky standards, how John Calipari still has a job today.
All right, let's move on to the second round. UConn, of course, took care of Northwestern pretty easily. San Diego State destroyed Yale, so that Yale story was one and done, but luckily they got to one. The same for Duquesne losing to Illinois. You have Iowa State continuing their run over Washington State. North Carolina defeat Michigan State. That was a blue blood matchup there, 1-9. You had Alabama take care of Grand Canyon. I had Grand Canyon, I think, to Sweet 16. Whoops. Clemson shocks Baylor. That's a 6-3 there. And then Arizona defeated Dayton pretty easily in the other bracket. And then, in the Midwest, Texas and Tennessee, that game was so low scoring. The shooting was offensive, really, but not that offensive. But Tennessee held on to beat Texas. Creighton destroyed or took care of Oregon, I should say. Gonzaga defeated Kansas. That game felt like a tale of two halves. Kansas kind of held serve, and then Gonzaga went on a run, and they just kept going on and on. The game, luckily, I wasn't around for. Purdue defeated Utah State 1-8, pretty easily, I would say there. Marquette took care of Colorado, a close one, but Shaka Smart stays on. Oakland University, unfortunately, loses to NC State. That was an 11-14. That was just too much big inside for Oakland to handle. And then Duke took care of the Dukes of James Madison. And then Houston, of course, took care of Texas A&M. Ben, I'll go with you here. What was one second-round game that you were really intrigued to in watching, other from the one you were at?
Yeah, I was actually at two. And I can kind of recap the two that I was at really quick. Because obviously, I have that. The JMU game against Duke. Just Duke right now looks scary good. Obviously, moving on from Coach K, I didn't think that their team is going to, be as great, but right now, I mean, they just, like Isaiah was mentioning about Kentucky, like they bring star recruits left and right, and they put on an absolute clinic of a shooting, thanks to Jerry McLean, one of their guards. He had 9 threes, I believe, yesterday. They also have Jeremy Roach, as well as their tall guy, Filipkowski, who's very well known around college basketball. JMU they were just flat. They're just going to make a basket. I just feel like teams like them, Yale, Duquesne, I feel like they were kind of like, that first round, like they got through it great. But you're facing the big boys. As rounds goes on, you're just facing tougher and tougher competition. In terms of my UConn Huskies against Northwestern, I thought that we're going to buy a 3 to save our life. I mean, in the first half, I think we went, 1 of 10, 15 or whatever. In the first half, they only got 2 threes. They had 3 threes total the whole entire game, and we still won by double figures. That's just how scary good that this team is. It just still amazes me, to this day. As John Fanta, who's very well tied in college basketball, it's really hard to put into words about this UConn team. I mean, they could just beat you any different way. They can beat you from down low. They can beat you from beyond the arc. And Northwestern, I thought in the second half, they played a little bit better than us. But Donovan Cleanan, I mean, he is the big guy. Obviously, he learned from Adama Sanogo last year on the national championship team, and he's put on an absolute clinic. They call him Clean Con over in CT, is because he has absolute great blocking ability. I think he had 2 massive blocks in the same possession once last night, and just getting the crowd all juiced up and stuff. Obviously, an All-American guard in Tristan Newton. Stephon Castle, who is a freshman who's probably going to go pro next year. He locked up Northwestern's best player to, I believe, under 10 points of Boo Buie, who is considered the GOAT, apparently, to Northwestern fans, I guess. Really good games that I saw yesterday. Obviously, they're more than kind of a blowout for them. In terms of the games, the second-round games that really appealed to me, I'm going to go Creighton over Oregon. I didn't get the chance to watch all of it, but double overtime. Oregon, I think, is a really solid team. And Creighton, I think, is just – they got a lot of great playmakers. And it's really good to see the Big East, a lot of these teams outside of UConn kind of show who they are, because teams like Virginia, teams like, Michigan State maybe here and there, but Virginia, for example, clear as day. Teams like Providence, teams like Seton Hall, I still think that they should have got more Big East teams into the tournament. So just the fact of like Crane obviously is still moving on, it just shows in terms of how great this conference is. And another reason too why UConn is very good is because consistently they're placing very good competition year in, year out. And so I think that's really what kind of keeps them going. So yeah, I'll probably go with Crane over Oregon in a double overtime, and of course the 2 games that I recapped yesterday.
And as we say good evening to Casey King, the Final Four is headed your way. Before we get to the Sweet 16 talk, let's go over to Isaiah. What was your most memorable game of this second round? Which one were you locked in on watching?
Wow, for me it was Houston versus Texas A&M, and boy did that game live up to the hype. I mean, it was an amazing game. It went to, I believe, overtime, right? And then Houston pulled away. But yeah, that game was amazing. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Buzz Williams is doing a great job coaching up Texas A&M. Exactly. And then Kelvin Sampson, former Rockets assistant, is doing a good job coaching up the Houston Cougars. So that was an entertaining game. It was definitely battled by both sides, and credit to Houston for that win. But then the couple games that for me that weren't really that. I mean, it was very. It was very popular, but it wasn't as memorable. Was number one the UConn game, just because it kind of brought back memories of me picking Stetson to beat UConn and go to the Sweet 16. So that screwed me over. I mean, James and I think we were watching the Dodgers and Padres game on Wednesday. I think last Wednesday. I was filling up my bracket, I believe, on the show, and I remember, I picked Stetson over UConn, and James was like, you gotta be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me. No way. And I think I had a Stetson versus Yale. Stetson versus Yale second round.
16? Second round.
Second round, yeah.
That's still wild. That's the thing, yeah.
And I had Florida going to the Sweet 16. I had Oregon going to the finals, and they're out of it now. So my whole bracket is busted left and right. And Utah State, I think I had them. If I pull up my bracket, I think I had Utah State going to the Sweet 16 as well. So I was picking upset after upset after upset, and yeah, Utah State getting trounced by Purdue. I didn't believe in Purdue prior to this tournament, and
I don't blame you.
Purdue, they're the real deal. Zach Edey is a stud. And then I got to give credit to your UConn Huskies, man. They proved me wrong. Purdue and UConn have proved me extremely wrong. This tournament.
You're defending champs last year. I mean, I don't know how you don't come in this year, Isaiah, and think that we're just gonna just absolutely just fall apart to a 16th ranked team that, according to their scouting report, does not play defense. And essentially, UConn can beat you in different ways. How do you think it was gonna go? All right.
Were they down 43-10?
Yeah, and I think they backdoor covered maybe it. So
Isaiah, why are you here?
I remember James was I woke up that morning, the first day of the tournament. I remember I woke up and then James I had a text from James on my phone saying, Stetson is down 43-10 to UConn, and it's not even.
Hey, how's that Stetson pick doing for you?
I was going off of famous players like Stetson.
You know what, James? I figured out, Isaiah, the reason why his bracket's all fucked up. He was jet lagged from his trip. Maybe that's it.
Maybe it's the hotel he was staying at. There was asbestos in the building. All right, so let's get on with. Casey King saying, Isaiah, I think you had one too many on picking Stetson. Yeah, or something else.
Yeah.
If you use your glasses, Isaiah, maybe that'll help. We had 12 upsets in the first 2 rounds, but the top 8 remain, just like the Huskies of UConn. You got Iowa State, of course, North Carolina, Arizona, Tennessee, Purdue, of course. Marquette, and then Houston at number 1. Now, going into this Sweet 16, guys, man, do you guys see a number 1 being upset in this Sweet 16 or any other upset out of this Sweet 16? I'll start with Ben again. Do you see any number 1 going down? I know for me, I'm looking at that Duke-Houston game, 4-1 as mine.
I got 2, and it's pretty simple. It's Purdue and it's Houston. Houston was fortunate enough to have a really good overtime yesterday against Texas Tech. They completely choked away that game yesterday. Purdue, let's be real, guys. It's all lanes on Zach Edey. And, people tell me about Clinton and Edey comparisons. Edey's great. I'm obviously not going to deny it. But all Zach Edey does, frankly, guys, it's boring to watch. It's rebounding and it's putting the ball back. I don't see him. I'm being dead ass. Like, he doesn't have any shot blocking ability compared to what Donovan Clinton has, right? Obviously, he's just fortunate enough to be like 7'2" and just, rebound the ball and make shots. I mean, you should be able to do that, right? At 7, he reminds me, guys, of Andre Drummond, where it's just like, all right, what are you going to get of him? Just rebound the ball. I think that's going to be a crazy comparison when it comes to, because he just doesn't, defensively, it's like, all right, he just makes blocks, but it's not like, eye-opening per se. It's not like, whoa, like this is like, a real deal of this guy. Like, everybody knows he's going to be fine. Like, he's a good player, but it's just because like he's tall. Like, who knows in terms of how he'd be after the fact. But I obviously produce a good team. Obviously, I'm not just going to shit on Zachy left and right. But I think that both of those 2 teams, Duke, as I saw play yesterday, they look really, really good. Purdue played Gonzaga. Gonzaga blew out Kansas. Which, by the way, speaking of Kansas, guys, before I lead over to Isaiah, do you guys see Bill Self's postgame conference when they asked him about his future? He said that he's been thinking about it for a month. I mean, bro, you are legitimately getting ready for a March Madness tournament, and you can't say this stuff. You can't say, like, specifically after the fact of, like, oh, I've been thinking about it for a good month. Like, how do the players feel about that? Like, you're the coach. You're supposed to give the players a buy-in factor and then maybe talk about it maybe after the season's over, not just right after the season's over when you got your doors blown off against Gonzaga. Just make that make sense in a little bit. But, I think that for UConn, for my team a bit, San Diego State, man, it's going to be tough. They're obviously it's going to be the rematch of the rematch of the United Championship last year. But I don't know, man. UConn's been able to, for the most part. Heck, they went 3 of 25 yesterday from 3, and they won pretty single-handedly. So it's going to take Creighton's effort against us in the regular season, where they shot like 65% from 3, and essentially have UConn's like B- game be able to lose that. That's the reason. Purdue and Houston, I just feel like as the 1 seeds are probably the more like susceptible, I'd say, to probably choking in the Sweet 16.
That's true. Before we go to Isaiah, we got some comments for Casey, or with Casey King here. Go ahead, Isaiah, put that on. He says, I have 3 Final Four teams left in UConn, North Carolina, and Gonzaga. And I have UConn winning it all, just like I do. I had a tough first 2 rounds. I think everyone did. But at least I got my 3 out of 4 left and still have a chance to win my bracket.
Right, at least you didn't pick Stetson, Casey. That's all, right?
Sorry, everyone, Isaiah.
Casey, you had a tough first 2 rounds, but not as bad as me. I probably got half the bracket wrong, maybe even more.
Hey, Isaiah, it could be worse. You could be playing for money for the brackets. I have a money bracket going on me right now, so I have a lot on that for sure. So could be worse.
I want to be in Isaiah's pool. Casey said I had Kentucky going to the title game, and I also picked Long Beach State to beat Arizona. This isn't last year, Casey.
Okay.
As I thought Arizona looked terrible down the stretch in their final few games of the regular season. And, yeah, they did struggle in their conference tournament, and you don't know with them. I think that's more of the local, regional reports he heard as well, probably being in Arizona. Next. Casey also mentions, I see Purdue and Houston game beat. You know what? I could see Purdue also having their struggles. If you get Edie in foul trouble, guess what? You could just do whatever you want inside.
Yeah, I mean, legitimately, James, the scouting report on Purdue is like the thing about like UConn, right? Is like typically, and I hate like going crazy about my team, but like how can you not at this point in time with the way that they've been playing? Is you kind of look at a lot of teams and be like, all right, there's a weakness there, like you kind of feel about it, right? Purdue and Houston is just like, all right, you get leading foul drum when maybe limit their shooters specifically. Houston, kind of similar in a way. UConn just doesn't have much of weaknesses at all. Like you're legitimately gonna have to have them like just completely shit the bed consistently, defensively, offensively, from the line. It's like that's how special they are and how well rounded they are. Purdue and Houston, obviously, though, are great teams. UNC, another good team as well too. So, like I said, this week 16 is going to be absolutely loaded of talent.
Isaiah, so let me help you out. This isn't a football tournament, but North Carolina, Alabama are playing. North Carolina's number 1, Alabama's 4. But do you think Alabama can give North Carolina a run here and make it out to the Elite Eight? Or what other upset do you see?
You know, sadly, I do because and it would be unfortunate and another big blow for me because I picked North Carolina to win it all, but I think they can. I think Alabama really could. I think Bama's got the shooting. They are a really tremendous offensive team. They scored like 100 points in their last game. Nate Oates has them playing really good basketball. The thing with Carolina that scares me is that North Carolina has shown that they're very inconsistent. One game, you'll get a really good offensive performance, and then the next game, like they will absolutely suck. So I don't know what you're going to get from Carolina, and if they play Alabama and have a really bad shooting night, then they're going to be screwed because Alabama's got a really good offense. The basketball team has a really good offense, but you have to be able to keep pace with Alabama, and if Carolina can't score, then that's a big problem. In terms of the other upsets, I honestly would not be shocked if NC State upset Marquette because Marquette's been very inconsistent this year. A lot of people had Marquette as one of the teams that could have been upset in rounds 1 or round 2. So the fact that they're still sitting here, despite playing kind of a careless basketball, I think that NC State does have a great shot to upset Marquette. And then when I look at the other games, Gonzaga, definitely. Gonzaga's playing really good right now. Purdue is they're in a lot of trouble against Gonzaga because Gonzaga's got that size that can match up with Purdue. And I think the last one is Duke and Houston. I mean, Duke is playing their best basketball at the perfect time right now, and they've got a really good team. Houston's got a really good team. That should be a fun game, I believe, on Friday, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, and one more thing, James, before I go to you, Ben mentioned about what Bill Self said. That kind of reminds me about what John Calipari said today in his radio news conference, and that is he said that I still can't believe he said this, but he said that we're not going to scout players. We're just going to recruit them. Like, okay, so you're just going to find you're not going to find fit. And that's the problem with Kentucky these days is like you get all these freshmen, but then they don't end up fitting, and they don't end up fitting the way that championship teams are made. So you have Bill Self with his idiotic quote. Like, I agree with you, Ben. You can't say that when you are preparing for the NCAA tournament. You just can't say that you've been thinking about your future for the last month. That just shows me that you haven't prepared for the biggest games. And John Calipari saying we don't scout, we just recruit. Like, that's just like another absolute idiotic statement.
Especially with him saying that when his like job's on the line, maybe. I don't know. Maybe you'd feel like, the fact that like the more like spoof stuff you say, the worse it might happen in terms of job security. Because like you mentioned, John Calipari, I think, is a very good college basketball coach. I think that many people around here pretty much agree with that. But there's agreement in terms of being great and legendary. And, there's guys like Coach K, Roy Williams, two of essentially the greatest college basketball coaches to ever do it. Why? Is because, one, two great alma mater schools with great culture. You know, they remind me of like Alabama football, right? You know, in terms of just a legendary coach with great overall talent. And it's not just the talent guys and the players, it's the culture. And in terms of consistency, going year after year and being, I mean, look at today, and obviously I hate crossing. Well, it's basketball, but crossing sports for men's and women's. The UConn women's basketball team guys just got now to their 30th straight Sweet 16 appearance. 30th in terms of record wise. That's because of one guy, one man only, and that's Gino Auriemma. Gino Auriemma essentially year after year. I mean, women's basketball too. It's just there are a lot of girls up on the rise. I mean, obviously Caitlin Clark tonight doing her thing. Paige Becker's obviously doing her thing for UConn, and you know, UConn's obviously had great culture in the past. So there's just so many great schools of course about culture. And John Calipari is a great coach, but is he legendary? That's in terms of can you get your program to the next step? And I just don't know if that's the case. But yeah, I agree with Isaiah, you know, profoundly in terms of you just can't say that type of stuff. And imagine if Bill Self and Calipari are both gone. You know, just think about how much an era. We'll just move on from that. You have Coach K last year. Yeah.
Saban, Belichick, Carroll. Whew. Jesus.
Yeah, 2024 would be mightily upside down. It's March Madness. They don't say it for nothing. So I didn't think it happened.
Yeah. Also, I look at Creighton maybe over Tennessee, a 3 over 2.
Yeah.
Creighton gets hot and Tennessee is not. That could be mine. Now, speaking of coaches, you guys kind of nailed it on the head, but there's rumors and news going on. There always is. But Hits host, this story kind of hit close to home for Isaiah here. On Saturday night, Dusty May is going to go to Michigan. He said he's going to choose the Wolverines over Louisville and Vanderbilt after the firing of Juwan Howard. Dusty May accepted a 5-year deal, which will pay him $3.75 million on the average over the life of that contract. I'll go to Isaiah first because I know that this is, you know, one of his schools. But first, I guess you could talk about Juwan Howard and that firing and, you know, whatever that is. But also about Dusty May, I know you did not like the hiring of him.
All right. So as you guys, so Michigan is my basketball team. Just because you know I followed like John Beilein and then Juwan Howard. But for me, like the firing of Juwan Howard, I labeled it as the worst mistake that Michigan has made in their program. I just think that listen, he's a Michigan man. He's an alumni of that program. And he has been successful. I mean, he's been to the Elite Eight. He went to the Sweet 16 with a team that shouldn't even have made the tournament in his second year. Yeah, like the last 2 years have not been good, but you got to take into account that a lot of players left for the the NBA draft. So he was a victim of a lot of players leaving. He was a victim of a lot of players transferring because they were unhappy with playing time. And so my thought was, listen, you got to give him time to fix it. You got to give him at least one more year. Like Jim Harbaugh in that COVID year, he went 2-4, right? A lot of people were like, oh my God, Jim Harbaugh 2-4. He might be fired. Like he should be fired. He should be gone. But you gave him one more year and look what happened. You won the national championship and you made the playoffs the year after you retained him. So my thing is with Juwan Howard, you got to give him one more year. Like if he screws up again next year, okay, fine, you could fire him. But to fire him instead of giving him one more year, I just think that was a terrible move by Michigan. It was a move that they shouldn't have made. And the Dusty May hire, listen, I hope Dusty May does a great job coaching Michigan. I really do. But I think that that's not a good hire whatsoever because Dusty May had one fluke run at FAU. This year's FAU team was more loaded in terms of their roster than last year's team. And that last year's team went to the Final Four, despite not playing any number one seeds whatsoever until they get to that Final Four. And then this year's team, they were supposed to be back in the Final Four. But guess what? They got bounced out in the first round. So they really underwhelmed. So I just think that Dusty May, listen, I hope he does well at Michigan. I really do. But Dusty May, he might be a product of a one fluke run. And the thing with Michigan is Michigan's a big time brand. It's a great job, and I just don't think if you fired Juwan Howard to get a Brad Stevens, if you fired him to get a Billy Donovan, if you fired him to get John Calipari, if you fired him to get any big time championship head coach, fine with me. But to get Dusty May, like I just don't like that move by the University of Michigan. I think that his run last year was a fluke, and they should have, if they were going to move on from Juwan Howard, they should have waited out the John Calipari sweepstakes, because if John Calipari gets let go, I guarantee you, you're going to have a lot of teams trying to hire him, and I think Calipari and Michigan would have been a great fit. But to get Dusty May, I'm not sure about the fit. I hope he does a great job, but you need to get a championship coach if you're going to fire Juwan Howard.
Just think, there's so many other colleges you could switch to if it doesn't work out. Ben, what do you think about this Michigan shakeup at head coach?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I don't really follow Michigan basketball closely. I'll be first to admit it, but they obviously gave him a massive deal. I mean, 5 years. Of course, replacing Juwan Howard is definitely going to be tough for him. Obviously, he's a lot younger, but we'll see. I mean, I think personally they should give him some time. I think that Florida Atlantic, even though they lost this year, they played Northwestern really tough. So I know for a fact that he kind of gets those guys ready. Last year, obviously, they had a great run to the Final Four. So I think maybe it's just the fact of like Juwan Howard, obviously, despite the fact in terms of like when you look at coaches, right, it doesn't always have to be the star coach, right? That you kind of look at specifically give all that money to. It's all about in terms of, I look at more of fit and culture, right? Those are kind of the two specific things that I look at in terms of hiring any type of coach, right? Because, I mean, heck, perfect example, the Patriots for 20 years, Bill Belichick, right? Culture and fit. You knew kind of for a fact what that was going to lead, right? So I think it's just a matter of, can this fit work, and can he bring culture to Michigan? Because Michigan, specifically, guys, you look at Michigan football this past year, culture, Jim Harbaugh. I mean, that's perfect. That's comparison like no other. So I hope it works out, like you mentioned, Isaiah. But if you can get those two things specifically, get those down, the fit and the culture, I think Michigan basketball would be just fine.
Casey King chimes in, and I think we all think this in a way. He thinks Michigan pushed the panic button, and I think Juwan Howard should have at least got one more year. I think we're all thinking that, but I think also, we all think that Michigan kind of made a quick trigger decision. Okay, so another one was West Virginia. They fired Josh Ellert. They landed their top target, and they've been going at this for weeks. Drake's Darian DeVries at Drake. He left after 6 years and 3 tournament appearances for the NCAA. So DeVries goes to Morgantown on a 5-year deal. West Virginia, guys, it just seems like they're without Huggins. They've been behind since he left. You don't see them as that contender anymore, that perennial contender in that conference. And do you think this man here, DeVries, will get him back to that? What do you say, Ben?
I'll be frankly honest, I don't know much about him. But one thing I do know about West Virginia basketball, guys, is they love me some full court presses. They're essentially one of those teams that I see that I remember in college basketball that just like, there's one team specifically that presses a lot. It's West Virginia basketball. And, I do think specifically, right, that the press works, right? But if you do it consistently like a team like they do, it's just like, for a fact teams are just too good not to break it at some point. And I think that, there's just some times where a scheme kind of overlooks at times of the coach itself. So it's just like, if this guy comes in, right, like I mentioned culture and fit for, the coach that's going into Michigan, if he essentially can work out this scheme, right, of like a full court consistent press, I think they'll be fine. I think just maybe West Virginia has their different scheme after Huggins left. That could be another thing too. Maybe they just kind of go to like a 1-3-1, kind of a half-court trap. Whatever it works, right? But I remember for West Virginia in the past with Huggins, they would full court you. They would consistently be on you left and right, and it worked here and there. But I just think that you got to be balanced defensively, and I just think that if you could do it all the time, you're just going to wear out your players, especially if it's a long season. You're going to keep on doing it. I mean, those guys better be in excellent shape, or else those guys are going to be last in the season the way that they usually do their press. So I do specifically hope that this coach works out for West Virginia. I have no hard feelings against that program whatsoever. But like I mentioned with the fit, it's all about can that fit specifically help with the scheme that they use over in Morgantown.
How about you, Isaiah? West Virginia, that used to be that rough and tough programs that you knew if you went there, you had to put on your hard hat and bring your lunch pill. Now, we don't know what they are. Do you think DeVries gets them back to the top of that conference, or will it take a while?
You know what? I like this hire. I just felt like with Huggins, it kind of got stale there at West Virginia, and now with a new coach coming in, I think it will be a new voice. I think that he will bring a breath of fresh air there to Morgantown. So I do like it. I like this hire a lot. I think that they'll have a new way of doing things that maybe that can elevate them to another level. Remember, West Virginia with Bob Huggins, whenever they had, like, they were in their prime, I mean, they were a really fun team to watch. I mean, they would always pull off upsets. I know they upset Kentucky a couple of times. They upset Duke, I think, one time. Like, they were in the Final Four one time. Like, they were a really good program, and the fans were really right behind them. So, if West Virginia basketball can get back to what they were, during the Bob Huggins heyday, I think that it would be tremendous for college basketball. And with DeVries, he went to the NCAA tournament 3 out of 4 times with DePaul's, and DePaul's is not an easy school to win with. So I like this hire. I think he's going to do a good job there. You got to give him time, though, to implement his vision for West Virginia. I think, James, you're on mute.
All right, let's move on. That was me. But yeah, wherever DeVries goes, it seems like success goes. And we see that sometimes in baseball. You take a ragtag team and you get them to where they need to go, and then you move on and on and on. So this move kind of shocked me in a way. It came out, I think, today with Danny Sprinkle leaving Utah State after they got drilled in their second round game. He's going to the Washington Huskies. They're not one and done, but they get to the second round. So Sprinkle's replacing Mike Hopkins. Mike he had a struggle of a couple of years, thinking that they were going to get in the tournament. Also, you lose to Wazoo at Seattle, and I think that was kind of the last straw when it came down to the Pac-12 games. So Sprinkle gets a 6-year deal that averages out to $3.7 million. And also, we'll take the transfer center, Great Osborne, with him to Washington. And if you haven't seen Great Osborne, he's really good. Outside, inside. He looks like an NBA draft prospect. I mean, this dude's going to be good after next season. So look for him in the next draft. So, guys, I was kind of shocked by this. I thought Mike Hopkins had another year. But since they're moving to the Big Ten, Washington decided to move on and kind of get the hottest – well, not the hottest name, but a really, really good coach. I was following along with him all the time in the Mountain West with Utah State. Isaiah, I'll start with you since we're on the West. Can Sprinkle lead Washington, especially going to the Big Ten? I mean, this dude, he's not really known. He's, coming from Utah State. Again, like a one and done. He's one and done, just like the player, one and done. I don't see this working out in Washington. Do you?
No, it's a tough fit. Like Ben mentioned, fit is very important when it comes to coaching. Sprinkle did a great job with Utah State. He led them to to March Madness. I believe they won a game. It's hard to win at Utah State, but if Washington was in the Pac-12, that'd be different. But you're moving in the Big Ten with Ohio State, Michigan. Michigan State and Tom Izzo. Nebraska's on the upswing with Fred Hoiberg. Minnesota, Illinois, Purdue. Like, there's a lot of these great teams. So I don't know. I mean, I think like Mike Sprinkle plays reportedly coaches a really fun style of offense, which should be entertaining for the fans. Because they've lost a lot under Mike Hopkins, but I just think with Sprinkle, the thing with the Big Ten that's different is the Big Ten is very physical, right? They've got a lot of great athletes when it comes to basketball. And you just look at Zach Edey. I mean, 7'2", he doesn't really have much great skill or a great style of play, but he just gets it done, like Nikola Jokic. So with Sprinkle, I hope he works out, but I don't think it will, just because you're moving into a new conference that's going to be more physical, that's going to be better athletes. And with Washington, it's going to take time to build up that program. I just don't know if they're going to have time to consistently be stuck down there as like the 7th or 8th best team in the Big Ten.
Yeah, Ben, what do you think about this? I thought one and done coaches, they don't happen. And this was such a surprise, I think, this morning when Danny Sprinkle left from Utah State to Washington. And how do you think he'll do at Washington, I should say, from Utah State?
Yeah. Well, looks like from his blog he's from Washington, so maybe he wanted to go back home. There could be something to that, but yeah, I think like Isaiah mentioned too, it's just all about can he go in and fit in that culture. I think with the coach that they're getting, I think it's an older coach to a younger coach. In terms of that ratio at times, it's just like him going to the Big Ten, right? It's not just the players specifically, like Purdue, Michigan, and Illinois. It's the coaches that you have to go against as well too. I mean, Tom Izzo, one of the best coaches out there, right? Purdue obviously has a very good one. Michigan, you look at potentially May being something over there. So, I mean, I think Hopkins is a very well-represented name out there in college basketball, especially for the folks on the West Coast. But still, until we figure it out, we have no idea.
Yeah, that was just a shocking move. So another one, speaking of Washington, the state of Washington State, Kyle Smith is leaving Washington State for Stanford after the Cardinal fired Jared Haas. And Stanford, they went to some tournaments, but this year they had a struggle in their last edition of the Pac-12. It feels like Washington State, this was like a one-and-done thing here. I mean, they were able to win a tournament game and they get ousted out in the second round. Meanwhile, Stanford felt like, yeah, maybe we should have been one of those teams to make it. But maybe the time was done for Haas there at Stanford. Isaiah, I'll go to you first. About Kyle Smith. Man, he has a tough task, especially with the Cardinal, going to their new conference. I'm trying to remember which one it was. But, man, that's going to be tough for someone coming in from, someone who just went to the tournament. Maybe they're trying to catch lightning in a bottle here, but how do you feel about this situation?
I like this move a lot. This is a great move for Stanford. Kyle Smith is a great coach. He led San Francisco, which is a very hard place to win, to an NCAA tournament. He got hired away by Wazoo. I think he went to the tournament one or two times with Wazoo, and Wazoo was pretty good under Kyle Smith. Kyle Smith is a really good coach. I think that with Stanford, the thing with Jared Haas is he was never the right fit. He was more of a southeastern guy coaching the West Coast. I don't think he should have ever been the hire. But I think Hal Smith is a perfect fit. West Coast guy, knows that West Coast area, plays a really good style of play. Wazoo, both offensively and defensively, were one of the tops in the Pac-12 the last several years. So I like this move a lot. I think this is a great move by Stanford. I think he's going to do a great job. Stanford, I think, honestly, should have fired Jared Haas last year, James, just because they could have gotten Mark Madsen. They could have gotten the Stanford alum Mad Dog, who's now coaching on the other side of the bay at Berkeley. And I think he would have been a great fit. James, I'm surprised. I don't know, because you know a lot about, Pac-12 basketball.
Yeah.
Yes, and I'm going to defer to you on that. But Mark Madsen, if I was Mark Madsen, I know he was only at Cal for 1 year, right? But Mark Madsen did a great job with Cal in year one. Like, he did a great job rebuilding that program. Yeah. If I'm Mark Madsen, I would have left for Stanford, just because it's your alma mater. It's Stanford. When Stanford's basketball is going great, it's a great place to be. So I think that Mark Madsen shouldn't have signed that extension. I really think he should have just gone to Stanford, because I think he would have been a great, great fit for Stanford, especially with Stanford ushering into a new era. Mark Madsen knows the modern day game, spread it out. He runs a spread offense in basketball. I just think it would have been a great fit. But Kyle Smith, I think he's a great fit as well, because he knows that place. He's a young coach. He's coached in the Bay Area. I think that he would do a great job at Stanford.
He's one of those alert hires, it seems like, where they're just going for someone, the hottest, ticket they could find, but maybe it won't amount to nothing. Yeah, Mark Madsen, it looks weird as heck for him to be coaching Cal. I mean, they had him in the Pac-12 tournament interviewed by Casey Jacobson. And you see Casey Jacobson, of course, his teammate at Stanford, and you see Madsen wearing the Cal polo shirt. It just look awkward as heck. But hopefully they can get it going at both schools as they move on to, I think, an East Coast new, not new conference, but new for them. I think the AAC, I think they're going to, I want to say. But Isaiah, so I want to do a little switcheroo with you and go out with the Calipari stuff on your side. But I got to talk about the big ratings of what we've seen with the NCAA. Even though there's been a limited amount of buzzer beaters, there's been a lot of tied games of regulation, 3-pointers, layups. That's been a good thing. That Texas A&M game was the example last night. That thing was amazing. But the lack of Cinderella runs, maybe they win in the first round like a Yale, but they're out in the second round. That's another thing. But guess what? That has not squashed the interest in this year's NCAA tournament. I think it has to do, though, with those blood schools getting in there, the true blue schools, blue blood schools, excuse me. The NCAA said the first round on Thursday averaged a record of 8.5 million viewers across CBS and the Turner channels. We were one of them. Friday's games drew 8.6 million, the second most ever, if you can believe that. The interest climbed even more for Saturday's second-round games, averaging a whopping 10.8 million viewers. That, of course, is another record. So I do love this time of year, March Madness. I always try to call out sick or work morning shifts so I can get home and watch it. Well, this year is different to me. I'm watching everything, not by choice, but I'm here. Isaiah, so, I know we don't want to see as many blue bloods, but it makes for great college basketball games and finishes. I do miss the fact we don't have Cinderella runs. But you felt like last year, the Final Four, it seemed like predetermined that UConn was just going to beat everyone no matter what. This year, you kind of have 4 or 5 schools going at UConn this year, probably. What do you think about these big ratings? And then, I'm trying to think to myself, like, is it good having the blue blood schools there, or do you like the Cinderella runs more?
You know what, James? To answer your first question, I'm not surprised that the ratings are high because this is the NCAA tournament, right? This is like one game, win or go home each round. Like that's what it's very exciting. That's why I think for me, the NCAA tournament is like so much better than the NBA playoffs. Even though the NBA playoffs are great, but the NCAA tournament is just so much better because you never know what's going to happen. Like you could have a bad shooting night and the top team could be done, or another, like one of the underdogs can have a really great shooting night and then they're moving on. So that's why I think a lot of people love the NCAA tournament. It's just because of how unpredictable it is. It's one game. You never know what's going to happen. You could see upsets on any given day. And plus, I think like doing the brackets have a lot to do with people's interest because everybody does their bracket and you're watching each game to see, okay, how's my pick doing? How's my pick doing? How's my pick doing? Like, I think that's why the ratings are still so high. And plus, you remember there's a lot of like history with the Blue Bloods, like UConn, and all those teams. And plus, the thing with this year is like it's UConn, but guess what? Like it's not a certain fact that UConn's gonna win it all. Like if UConn could win it all, but it's not like it's just UConn. Like I think it's very unpredictable this year. Like I could see like Purdue winning it all. I could see Gonzaga winning it all. Like I could see any of those teams that I listed win it all. Like I could see any team win it all. So I think that's why the NCAA tournament the ratings remain high. And also I think that when you look at to answer your second question about the Blue Bloods, for me, I like unpredictability. So having the Blue Bloods there, it's great because it's the tradition of college basketball. Like that's why I would love like to see Duke and Kentucky and those teams, like because when they're having success, it's more fun. But in terms of like, do I want them there? I mean, it's a great break that they're not there, but I would prefer them there just because when you have like the Dukes, the Kentuckys, the Carolinas there, like it's like, okay, it's more fun than without them being there. It's like why the NBA playoffs, when you have the Lakers, the Celtics, the Knicks there, it's like, okay, like everybody's more excited and hyped up about those playoffs.
Okay, so I know you mentioned about John Calipari at Kentucky. They were out in the first round. You mentioned how he will use that transfer portal. Now, let me end it on this for me before I get out of here. I'll introduce a topic to you. So, we were hoping Calipari would have met with AD Mitch Bonhart today, and we would have an answer about the future of Calipari, but he's going to meet Tuesday with Bonhart. Isaiah, what can this spell for Kentucky? Like, do you think, is this truly the last year for Calipari? The way that he's been one and done or two and done? Or is that guaranteed money going to be too much of a factor for Kentucky to bring him back? And then you can go into, the recruiting process for Calipari now and how he's going to use that transfer portal and just bringing in players, as you said.
All right, James. I think, James. If he has to go, great. James, was great having you on. But in terms of John Calipari, you guys know my stance. John Calipari needs to be fired, and he should have been fired immediately right after that loss to Oakland, dude. That dude is one of the most overrated coaches in all of college sports. There's nobody that does less with more than John Calipari. I mean, John Calipari always has elite recruits and five-star recruit after five-star recruit after five-star recruit, and his team is loaded with great talent, and he has like a talent advantage over like a ton of teams in college sports, and he just can't win a title, like one title in 15 years. One title, just one in 15 years is absolutely just disgraceful with what he's had to work with. I mean, you had Devin Booker, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, Anthony Davis. You've had a lot of great talent, a lot of superstars right now in the NBA that came through Kentucky. And for you to only win one championship in 15 years coaching that talent, it's just disgraceful. He should be gone, and he should have been gone after that Oakland game. They should have never lost to Oakland. It was a disgrace how they lost to Oakland. John Calipari just never, ever seems to be able to maximize the talent. He just cannot. I mean, he made Devin Booker a six-man, James. Devin Booker was a six-man, for crying out loud, and Devin Booker averaged 6 points a game. In the NBA, in his rookie year, Devin Booker averaged 3 times that in the NBA. So I just think he doesn't know how to use the talent. He can recruit, but he doesn't know how to use the talent, and that's a problem for Kentucky because he's kind of like Mario Cristobal, where Mario Cristobal gets great talent, but he doesn't know how to use the talent. He had Justin Herbert at Oregon, and Oregon consistently never really done much with Justin Herbert, despite having him. So John Calipari should be fired. And, the thing with John Calipari that makes me dislike him is his smug, arrogant attitude. I mean, this dude, to say that we don't scout, we just recruit. I mean, what are you talking about? That's the worst statement that you can say. Like, you don't scout, you just recruit, so you just get the best talent. No wonder why your program is failing. This is Kentucky basketball we're talking about. It's like the Florida Gators of football. It's like Alabama of football. It's like, the Lakers. It's like one of those big brands in sports. And John Calipari, he's just not producing, right? He's just not producing. It's like if Doc Rivers was coaching the Lakers and he had LeBron, AD, and all that great superstars coming left and right, and he only won 1 championship in his 7 years there, he would have been fired because the standard is championships at those places, and John Calipari just simply hasn't produced, and he hasn't produced enough championships. I would love to see, as James I see has to go, but I would love to see what you guys have to think. Should John Calipari get fired? My opinion is yes. I think he should have been fired. I think that for Kentucky, you need a new voice. It's time to get rid of him. And it's time to get a guy that can maximize the talent of the players that he gets. And, I think that, you give Juwan Howard that talent, right? Juwan Howard would have won 3 championships in 7 years. You give Todd Golden, Florida coach, who's one of the biggest and best basketball minds right now in the game of college basketball. He would have won a couple championships already. Like, you give anybody, Billy Donovan, that talent. Billy Donovan would have won at least 4 championships at Kentucky. Like, John Calipari is just the most overrated coach in college sports, and it's time for a change there in Lexington. And I think that meeting tomorrow, I think we'll get some news tomorrow about John Calipari. If I'm Mitch Barnhart, the athletic director, I'll look at his resume and I say, it's time to go, bro. It's time for you to go because you just simply have not done enough to maximize the talent and win. I mean, this is Kentucky, right? Like, we don't care about NCAA tournament appearances, don't care about Sweet 16 appearances. It's about winning championships, and 1 title in 15 years, that is not good enough. So for me, I think John Calipari should be fired by Kentucky. But yeah, it was a great show. Thank you to Ben, Edward, Casey for tuning in. Appreciate Ben for hopping on with me and James tonight on our IM6 Sports Network March Madness Extravaganza. It was a great show. Let's get into some final thoughts before we end tonight's program here tonight. Final thoughts and announcements. Final thoughts is, ladies and gentlemen, the season of baseball is here. Let's play that music. Bam, ba-da-bam, ba-da, ba-da-ba-da, bam, 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 bam. Baseball is here. Opening day is a couple of days away. And tomorrow, me and the guys, Ben, Loro, and those guys, we are going to be doing our 2024 MLB preseason preview show. We will be previewing the season for our teams and predicting the wild card division winners, the wild card winners, the playoff teams, and also the playoff bracket and the World Series winner and matchup as well. And also we're going to be predicting the awards, MVP, Cy Young, and all of that stuff. So make sure you guys tune in. It's going to be fun tomorrow night at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, 8 p.m. here on the West Coast. And also, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so happy to announce that No BS with myself and Trevor Williams, we haven't done this show in like over a year. It is coming back, and it's coming back tomorrow night. Can't wait. Check it out. It's going to be at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. here on the West Coast, 9 p.m. on the East Coast. It's going to be fun. Can't wait. We're going to dive into March Madness, get into some Shohei stuff. We're going to get into some football stuff as well. It's going to be fun. Cannot wait for it. But guys, a couple final thoughts for tonight's program. What a great show. Can't wait for the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 coming up this weekend. But also, baseball is back, man. Baseball is back. I had a great time in Arizona. Definitely going to talk about my trip tomorrow night. But so can't wait for it. It's going to be fun. Definitely check out that baseball preview show. We got a great show for you. And the last final thought I will have is, if John Calipari is fired, folks, watch out, because this is going to come. John Calipari will be the next head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. You can book that because he loves LeBron James, he loves Anthony Davis, and this is the Lakers. And if the Lakers offer you that job, and we've been trying to get John Calipari for like since 2013, I think. John Calipari, we've been trying to get him for at least 10 years. John Calipari is that superstar that the Lakers covet, and I think that he would accept the job if he gets fired. So watch out, John Calipari. I think he's going to be the next head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. But it's been a great show. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. But yeah, we don't have any more comments. Let me see. Yeah, we have Edward. Thank you, Edward, for tuning in. He says, more day left to the best of March Madness end. But yeah, it's been a great show. Appreciate Edward, Ben, and Casey for tuning in. And thank you everybody for tuning in to our March Madness Extravaganza. We hope to do one after the Sweet 16 and after the Elite 8 on Friday for the Sweet 16. On Monday, I think, for the Elite 8. But stay safe, stay healthy, guys. It's been a fun show, but we will see you guys tomorrow for our baseball preview show. It's going to be fun. Can't wait for it. But I'll leave you guys with this outro. It's going to be fun. March Madness is underway, and it's a blast. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody.
Better shooting range. There's the pass to Leitner. Puts it up.
With Archie Diacono, 3 seconds at midcourt. Jenkins gives it to Jenkins for the championship. That's not yet. Davis close out his rock. Close out. Shot that quick. Look at this scissor.
Seed in the South, up 13 points in complete